Have you ever wondered what happens when the paths of two deeply influential leaders, one political, one spiritual, cross at a pivotal moment in history? The story of Bill Clinton, the 42nd President of the United States, and the Dalai Lama, the spiritual beacon of Tibetan Buddhism, is exactly that, a meeting of minds that transcended borders, challenging the world's understanding of diplomacy, human rights, and compassion. During his presidency, Clinton forged a unique relationship with the Dalai Lama, reflecting his values and the complexities of U.S. policy during a time of rapid global change. Clinton's era saw economic globalization, shifting U.S.-China relations, and a spotlight on human rights issues that demanded nuanced diplomacy. His meetings with the Dalai Lama were not just about political strategy, they were about acknowledging a deeper, human truth, that no matter how tangled international politics becomes, our shared humanity must never be forgotten. The political context, U.S.-China relations and the Tibet question, the 1990s brought a whirlwind of transformation to U.S.-China relations. After the tragic Tiananmen Square events of 1989, China faced global scrutiny, especially regarding human rights. The Dalai Lama, who had just won the Nobel Peace Prize for his nonviolent fight for Tibetan rights, became a powerful symbol of resistance against oppression. Imagine standing up for your people's dignity in the face of a giant that refuses to acknowledge it. What courage that must take. Clinton, upon taking office in 1993, faced a delicate balancing act. On one side was the promise of economic cooperation with a rising China, and on the other, a commitment to uphold democratic values and human rights, with Tibet at the center. How could he navigate this? How could one reconcile the desire for economic progress with the moral imperative to stand against oppression? These were the questions Clinton faced, questions that continue to resonate in international relations today. Clinton's personal engagement with the Dalai Lama. Clinton met with the Dalai Lama several times during his presidency, often in informal settings that highlighted the complexity of U.S.-China relations. Picture these meetings, quiet conversations behind closed doors, but with the world watching. Despite the private nature of these encounters, the message was clear. The U.S. was committed to human rights, and Tibet was not forgotten. Clinton deeply admired the Dalai Lama's steadfast commitment to peace. He recognized the beauty of the middle way approach, a vision that sought autonomy for Tibet within China, rather than full independence. How powerful is that, to seek a middle ground, even with those who have wronged you? This philosophy resonates beyond the Tibetan struggle. It's a lesson in humility and pragmatism for all of us. Clinton respected this vision, understanding its potential to bring lasting peace while respecting cultural identity. In their dialogues, Clinton and the Dalai Lama discussed the ongoing cultural repression in Tibet, the erasure of traditions and the suppression of a people's spirit. Can you imagine a world where your culture, your very way of life, is systematically stripped away? Clinton's willingness to engage in these conversations, despite pressure from China, spoke to his belief in the universality of human rights, rights that are not negotiable, no matter how economically enticing the opponent might be. U.S. policy, balancing engagement and advocacy. Clinton's strategy towards China, often called constructive engagement, aimed to foster cooperation while encouraging improvements in human rights. This was a bold move, to believe that economic engagement could spark political change, rather than isolation or confrontation. Was it the right choice? Some argued it was pragmatic, others felt it compromised the core values of human rights. Isn't that the eternal dilemma of leadership, how to weigh strategic interests against moral responsibility? Clinton's meetings with the Dalai Lama were emblematic of this balance. By advocating for dialogue between Beijing and the Dalai Lama, Clinton sought peaceful solutions rather than confrontation. He urged Chinese leaders to negotiate, recognizing the Dalai Lama as a moderate voice, one that could lead towards harmony. How often, in our personal lives or in politics, do we see the value in moderation, in striving for peaceful dialogue, even when it's challenging? Challenges and Chinese reaction. Predictably, China did not react positively. To Beijing, the Dalai Lama was a separatist, and Clinton's engagement was seen as meddling in internal affairs. Despite the backlash, Clinton remained resolute. He framed his meetings with the Dalai Lama as personal engagements, underscoring a commitment to religious freedom rather than endorsing Tibetan independence. There's something inspiring here: Clinton's subtle defiance against pressure, his commitment to fundamental human rights even when politically inconvenient, but this approach wasn't without its critics. Some saw it as not enough, that Clinton prioritized economic relations over true advocacy for Tibetan independence. It raises a profound question: in the face of economic interests, how far are we willing to go for our principles? It's a question that continues to challenge world leaders, and indeed, each of us in our everyday decisions. Clinton's legacy on Tibet and human rights, the legacy of Clinton's engagement with the Dalai Lama, is complex, yet undeniably impactful. He set a precedent for future U.S. presidents, showing that economic cooperation need not mean turning a blind eye to human rights abuses. His dialogues with the Dalai Lama highlighted that economic progress and advocacy for justice could coexist, though not without difficulty. Clinton's emphasis on dialogue over confrontation laid the groundwork for subsequent U.S. policy on Tibet. His efforts underscored a belief in the power of conversation, in the ability to resolve conflict through understanding and mutual respect. How different would our world be if more leaders adopted this approach, if more of us sought understanding rather than dominance? For the Dalai Lama, Clinton's support was significant. While the U.S. didn't enact harsh measures against China, the symbolic support kept international attention on Tibet. Clinton's presidency showed that the Tibetan struggle, despite being a thorny issue in international politics, deserved a place on the global stage, a testament to the enduring power of solidarity. Broader implications for international diplomacy: the Clinton-Dalai Lama relationship offers a broader lesson for diplomacy, that personal connections can make a difference. It wasn't grand gestures or formal treaties that made an impact here. It was the quiet power of empathy, of two leaders sitting down and acknowledging a shared desire for peace. This kind of diplomacy, one that prioritizes human connection over hard power, is a reminder that even in the realm of politics, we cannot lose sight of the human element. Isn't that what real leadership is about? Understanding, connecting, and standing up for what is right? Clinton's efforts demonstrated that advocacy for human rights could coexist with complex political relationships. Even as globalization brought nations closer economically, he showed that there remained space for moral responsibility. Isn't that the challenge we all face in this interconnected world, to ensure that progress does not trample over the most vulnerable among us? Clinton and the Dalai Lama. Personal reflections and conversations. To truly understand the impact of the Clinton-Dalai Lama relationship, it's important to delve deeper into their personal interactions, those quiet, reflective moments that defined their bond. Clinton, known for his empathy and ability to connect with people, found in the Dalai Lama a kindred spirit. The Dalai Lama's gentle demeanor, his unwavering commitment to compassion, and his infectious laugh were all qualities that resonated deeply with Clinton. Their meetings were marked by discussions that went beyond politics. They were conversations about the nature of suffering, the importance of forgiveness, and the pursuit of peace. In one of their most profound meetings, Clinton reportedly asked the Dalai Lama how he managed to maintain his sense of peace despite the hardships faced by his people. The Dalai Lama's response was simple yet profound: peace begins within. If we cannot find it in ourselves, how can we expect to bring it to others? This statement left a lasting impression on Clinton, shaping his own approach to conflict resolution and diplomacy. It was a reminder that leadership, at its core, is about the ability to inspire and uplift others, even in the face of adversity. The Dalai Lama, in turn, was struck by Clinton's genuine curiosity about Tibetan culture and Buddhism. Clinton wasn't just interested in the political implications of Tibet's struggle, he was interested in the people, in their traditions, and in their spiritual resilience. During one of their meetings, the Dalai Lama shared stories of Tibetan monks who, despite being imprisoned and tortured, continued to practice compassion towards their captors. Clinton listened intently, moved by the depth of their commitment to nonviolence. These stories reinforced his belief in the power of forgiveness and the need for empathy in leadership. The middle way approach, a path of compassionate pragmatism, the Dalai Lama's middle way approach, was a central theme in his discussions with Clinton. This approach, which seeks genuine autonomy for Tibet within the framework of Chinese sovereignty, is a powerful example of compassionate pragmatism. It is not about winning or losing, it is about finding a solution that respects the dignity of all parties involved. Clinton admired this approach, recognizing its potential to serve as a model for other conflicts around the world. In their conversations, Clinton often expressed his admiration for the Dalai Lama's willingness to compromise for the sake of peace. He understood that true leadership is not about demanding everything you want, but about finding common ground, even when it means making difficult concessions. The middle way approach resonated with Clinton's own philosophy of governance, a belief that progress is made not through confrontation, but through dialogue and mutual understanding. The Dalai Lama's vision for Tibet was not about independence at all costs, it was about preserving the cultural and spiritual identity of the Tibetan people while recognizing the political realities of the region. Clinton saw in this vision a reflection of his own efforts to navigate the complexities of US-China relations, a desire to promote human rights without jeopardizing the potential for economic cooperation and peace. Their shared commitment to finding a middle path, even in the most challenging circumstances, was a testament to their belief in the power of empathy and understanding. Human rights advocacy in the face of economic interests. One of the most challenging aspects of Clinton's relationship with the Dalai Lama was the tension between human rights advocacy and economic interests. As president, Clinton was acutely aware of the growing importance of China as an economic partner. The potential for increased trade and investment with China was a significant factor in U.S. foreign policy during the 1990s. Yet, Clinton also understood that economic progress should not come at the expense of human dignity. In his meetings with the Dalai Lama, Clinton often grappled with the question of how to effectively advocate for human rights without jeopardizing economic ties with China. It was a delicate balance, one that required a nuanced approach. Clinton believed that by engaging with China economically, the U.S. could encourage gradual political liberalization and improvements in human rights. This belief was not without controversy. Critics argued that it allowed China to continue its repressive policies without facing significant consequences. However, Clinton's engagement with the Dalai Lama demonstrated his commitment to keeping the issue of Tibet on the international agenda. He used his platform as president to raise awareness about the plight of the Tibetan people, even as he pursued economic engagement with China. During a 1998 visit to China, Clinton publicly called for dialogue between the Chinese government and the Dalai Lama, emphasizing the importance of respecting Tibetan cultural and religious rights. This was a bold move, one that signaled to both China and the international community that the U.S. would not ignore human rights abuses in pursuit of economic gain. The role of empathy in leadership. One of the most striking aspects of Clinton's relationship with the Dalai Lama was the role that empathy played in their interactions. Clinton's ability to connect with people from all walks of life was one of his defining characteristics as a leader. He was known for his ability to make others feel heard and understood, a quality that resonated deeply with the Dalai Lama's own emphasis on compassion and human connection. In their meetings, Clinton and the Dalai Lama often spoke about the importance of empathy in leadership. The Dalai Lama emphasized that true leadership is not about power or authority, but about serving others and alleviating their suffering. Clinton took this message to heart, incorporating it into his approach to both domestic and international issues. He understood that effective leadership requires the ability to see the world through the eyes of others, to understand their struggles and aspirations, and to act in a way that uplifts and empowers them. The relationship between Clinton and the Dalai Lama serves as a reminder that empathy is not a weakness in leadership, it is a strength. It is the ability to connect with others on a human level, to understand their pain and to work towards solutions that benefit all. In a world that often prioritizes power and control, the Clinton-Dalai Lama relationship stands as an example of how empathy can be a powerful force for change, even in the most complex and challenging of circumstances. Clinton's advocacy for dialogue and peaceful resolution. Throughout his presidency, Clinton consistently advocated for dialogue as the path to resolving the Tibet issue. He believed that meaningful change could only come through open communication and mutual understanding. This belief was reflected in his repeated calls for the Chinese government to engage in direct negotiations with the Dalai Lama. Clinton recognized the Dalai Lama as a moderate and reasonable leader, one who was genuinely interested in finding a peaceful solution that respected both Chinese sovereignty and Tibetan cultural identity. Clinton's emphasis on dialogue was not limited to his interactions with the Dalai Lama. It was a central tenet of his broader foreign policy approach. He believed that diplomacy, rather than confrontation, was the key to addressing global challenges. This belief was evident in his efforts to engage with China, Russia, and other nations with whom the U.S. had complex relationships. Clinton's approach was one of constructive engagement, a belief that by building relationships and fostering communication, the U.S. could encourage positive change. The Dalai Lama, for his part, appreciated Clinton's support for dialogue. He often spoke of the importance of keeping the lines of communication open, even in the face of adversity. The Dalai Lama's commitment to nonviolence and his belief in the power of dialogue were qualities that Clinton deeply admired. Their shared belief in the importance of peaceful resolution and mutual understanding was a foundation of their relationship, one that had a lasting impact on U.S. policy towards Tibet. The symbolic power of Clinton's meetings with the Dalai Lama. While Clinton's meetings with the Dalai Lama were often informal and conducted away from the public eye, their symbolic power was immense. These meetings sent a clear message to China and the world. The U.S. was committed to human rights and would not ignore the plight of the Tibetan people. The very act of meeting with the Dalai Lama was a statement of solidarity, one that resonated deeply with Tibetans and human rights advocates around the globe. Clinton's willingness to meet with the Dalai Lama, despite the potential diplomatic fallout with China, demonstrated his commitment to standing up for what he believed was right. It was a reminder that leadership is not always about making the easy choice. Sometimes, it is about making the difficult choice, the one that aligns with your values, even when it comes at a cost. For Clinton, the cost was the potential strain on U.S.-China relations, but the reward was the opportunity to stand in solidarity with a people fighting for their cultural and religious identity. The Dalai Lama often spoke of his appreciation for Clinton's support, noting that the visibility provided by their meetings helped keep the issue of Tibet alive in the international community. For Tibetans, Clinton's engagement was a source of hope, a sign that their struggle was not forgotten. That there were leaders willing to speak out on their behalf. The symbolic power of these meetings cannot be overstated. They were a testament to the impact that personal diplomacy and moral courage can have on the global stage. The broader impact on U.S.-China relations. Clinton's engagement with the Dalai Lama had broader implications for U.S.-China relations. It highlighted the inherent tension between economic cooperation and human rights advocacy, a tension that continues to shape U.S. policy towards China today. Clinton's approach was one of balance. He sought to foster economic ties with China while also advocating for improvements in human rights. This balancing act was not without its challenges. But it set a precedent for future administrations. The Clinton-Dalai Lama relationship also underscored the importance of maintaining a consistent stance on human rights. By meeting with the Dalai Lama and publicly calling for dialogue, Clinton made it clear that the U.S. would not shy away from addressing difficult issues, even with powerful economic partners. This approach has influenced subsequent U.S. presidents, who have continued to raise the issue of Tibet in their dealings with China, albeit with varying degrees of emphasis. Clinton's efforts to engage with both China and the Dalai Lama demonstrated that it is possible to pursue economic cooperation while also advocating for justice and human rights. It is a delicate balance, one that requires careful navigation, but it is a balance that is essential for responsible global leadership. Clinton's legacy in this regard is one of pragmatism and principle, a recognition that economic progress and human dignity need not be mutually exclusive. Lessons for future leaders. The story of Clinton and the Dalai Lama offers valuable lessons for future leaders. It is a reminder that leadership is not just about policies and strategies. It is about the ability to connect with others, to understand their struggles, and to act in a way that promotes peace and justice. Clinton's engagement with the Dalai Lama was a powerful example of how personal diplomacy, grounded in empathy and respect, can make a difference, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. Future leaders can learn from Clinton's willingness to take risks for the sake of principle. His decision to meet with the Dalai Lama, despite the potential diplomatic repercussions, was an act of moral courage. It was a reminder that true leadership requires the ability to stand up for what is right, even when it is not the easiest or most convenient path. In a world where economic interests often take precedence over human rights, Clinton's example is a powerful reminder of the importance of maintaining a moral compass. The relationship between Clinton and the Dalai Lama also highlights the importance of dialogue and understanding in resolving conflicts. Their shared belief in the power of conversation, in the ability to find common ground even in the most challenging of circumstances, is a lesson that remains relevant today. In a world that is increasingly polarized, the need for leaders who are willing to listen, to empathize, and to seek peaceful solutions has never been greater. The enduring legacy of Clinton and the Dalai Lama. The relationship between Bill Clinton and the Dalai Lama during the 1990s was more than a diplomatic engagement. It was a testament to the power of empathy, compassion, and moral courage in leadership. Clinton's willingness to engage with the Dalai Lama, to advocate for dialogue and human rights, left a lasting impact on U.S. policy towards Tibet and set a precedent for future leaders. It was a reminder that even in the complex world of international politics, there remains space for compassion and humanity. For the Dalai Lama, Clinton's support was a source of hope and encouragement. It demonstrated that the Tibetan struggle for cultural and religious identity was not forgotten, that there were leaders willing to stand in solidarity with the oppressed. The meetings between Clinton and the Dalai Lama were not just political gestures, they were acts of moral courage, a testament to the belief that empathy and understanding can be powerful forces for change. The enduring legacy of Clinton and the Dalai Lama is a story of hope, a reminder that even in a world dominated by power dynamics, there is room for principles, for standing up for what is right. Their relationship is a testament to the importance of maintaining dialogue, of seeking peaceful resolutions, and of never losing sight of our shared humanity. It is a legacy that continues to inspire, a reminder that the heart of leadership lies not in power or authority, but in the willingness to see the humanity in others and to act on it.